The new domestic abuse law gives the police and courts new powers to help prevent offending, protect victims and ensure they have the support they need. And it recognises that domestic abuse isn't just about physical violence.
There are new criminal offences such as coercive control. Up until now, domestic abuse has very much been limited to violence, and coercive control is now a criminal offence. We haven't had that before, but of course coercive control very much forms part of domestic abuse situations. There's also a new criminal offence of non-fatal strangulation, and the definition of who can be a victim of domestic abuse is also wider in the new Act.
The command paper was published in 2020, but was delayed because of the pandemic. This, however, allowed for an extensive period of consultation, with the bill finally published last November and passed in Parliament at the start of the year. However, one aspect of the legislation which hasn't yet been enacted is the protection order.
There is still some more training to go, particularly by the Royal Gibraltar Police, so that we can commence that part of the legislation. Some training has already been undertaken. Further training has already been commissioned, so as soon as that training is completed, then that part of the legislation will be commenced. I have to say that that part of the legislation has not been commenced in the UK yet.
First and foremost, the domestic abuse team come under our public protection unit, and the public protection unit is there to protect the vulnerable, and people who are victims of domestic abuse cases are vulnerable people. So therefore what they do is they spearhead all of our work in respect of investigations, but primarily as well linking up with all our partner agencies so that we can make sure that we're all singing from the same hymn when we're dealing with victims of crime, because we mustn't forget that the victims of crime are the most important people here for us.
While the law goes further in protecting victims, what support is there in the aftermath of abuse?
We know that, of course, domestic abuse has a hugely profound effect on children, and we want to make sure that we support all victims of domestic abuse, but particularly children. In this new legislation, children are specifically recognised as victims of domestic abuse if they are in a household where domestic abuse occurs. Now, first and foremost, the Royal Gibraltar Police will have their victim support unit, but there are also lots of other partner agencies who work with children. Predominantly, when there is a case that affects children, it's assessed by the care agency, so social workers will look to see if the children are part of the household or whether the children themselves have to be subject to child protection measures, so that will be considered by them. In addition to that, the care agency will also offer therapeutic support to children.
And for perpetrators who think they can get away with their crime if their victim is silenced, they're wrong.
There are times when victims of crimes do not want to proceed with a criminal case, and there are a number of factors and a number of reasons for why that happens, and we need to be able to respect that. But the minute the Royal Gibraltar Police or any of our partner agencies become aware that there are huge risks to victims, we will take positive action to make sure that victims of crime are protected, because we have a duty for them.
The part of our awareness campaign is very much to reach out to people who are victims or friends and family of people who are victims, to recognise the signs and encourage people to report an incident of domestic abuse. Domestic abuse is, of course, a crime and can be reported to the police, but help and support is also available from other agencies, particularly the care agency, who can help in terms of therapeutic support. But a referral to the police can also be made by the other partner agencies. The way that we've structured things means that if anyone makes a disclosure, say for example to a GP, to a social worker, then they will be encouraged to refer the matter to the Royal Gibraltar Police.
For victims of domestic abuse, this legislation is a long time coming, but it does form part of a wider strategy to help and support victims. The net is closing around perpetrators, and this new law sends a clear message that any form of domestic abuse will not be tolerated.